Hello, and thank you for taking some time out of your day to learn more about the Proven Optics billing and cost recovery module. Automating invoice generation and streamlining cost recovery on the ServiceNow platform has never been easier with the Proven Optics billing application. This application enables financial users to import vendor bills and expenses from external files or from anywhere from operational or consumption data on the ServiceNow platform, for example, like a service request. This allows us to easily align invoices and recover for those costs. And the beauty is, again, the flexibility of the solution, allowing you to take and centralize external vendor and billing data, as well as any of the data that you might be housing today on platform. So let's take a look at exactly how we are able to generate an invoice as we see on the screen, and kind of walk back into how we get these inputs in an automated fashion. Now keep in mind, everything on the ServiceNow platform, the beauty of being on low-code, no-code, modern platform, is it's configurable. So the example invoice that you see on your screen, of course, can be branded, tailored to your spec from whatever your invoicing standard or invoicing template looks like. This is just what comes out of the box. Everything in the system that you'll see today is what you get upon install of the application. From there, we can, of course, make tweaks, make things branded to your specification. Right. Let's take a look at how we start, which is how do we get data into the platform? This is with what we call source data definitions in Proven Optics. Now, you can think of the source data definition as the hub of how the data really gets populated, and then we'll branch out from there and become ultimately invoice lines and roll up to invoices. This is an extremely flexible mechanism that essentially allows you to grab data one of two ways. First, it allows you to grab data from any data source. This could be API level integration, scheduled job, or just a simple Excel, XML, or JSON data load. Let's take a look at the Verizon usage bill. The idea here is that we can essentially choose and put a transform map behind any data template. So for example, if you have vendor bills, we would just be able to simply make a transform map, which would culminate as a data source for any of those type of vendor bills. So if that's in a standardized Excel or any of those formats that you're getting billed, we would be able to essentially attach that to what we call a transform map or data source and load that into the system. Now, for those of you not familiar with transform maps in ServiceNow, it's a very easy mechanism at which we can map what it's called in the source data file, like a column on an Excel spreadsheet, and what we want to see that be in the target data, which would actually be the record set within Proven Optics and ServiceNow. So once we load that, we are able to see all of our staged invoice lines come in from that Excel spreadsheet. So the idea is that your data could start looking like a standard, Excel spreadsheet, like we see here. And the data would ultimately be transformed and automated to look at something like this. Now you'll notice that there's certain fields that were automatically populated based on logic that we've given the system. Things like the payer. So we have consumer to payer mappings that you can set up easily in the system that essentially allow you to map any consumer to a department, as well as from a department to who's actually responsible for paying. As we know, the consumer or the consuming department isn't always the responsible paying organization. There might be a parent organization. This mapping allows us to automate who will actually get that bill and put in that billing information, as well as the billing frequency. This will also map to a consumption period that we're billing for. And you'll also notice that we can actually group information based on a type of service. So, for example, if we head back to our source data definition, you'll notice that we appended the Verizon vendor pass-through service group to this data load, which essentially will put in the logic of percentage rate adjustment for our service category of telecom uplift of 3%. We can do flat fee adjustments, so a standard dollar amount, or percentage adjustments based on the amount that we're seeing to automatically make sure that the amount is correct and we're recovering the right amount of dollars, right? Again, once that data comes in, it hits a staged invoice lines, which is essentially a staging ground for all of your invoices and is sent through a standard approval process. Now, if we take a look at the other way, the other source data definition type, which is a source table, meaning this data might already live in the platform. A lot of our clients today use the service catalog, for example, or are housing license information in their SAM modules or HAM modules within ServiceNow. And we are able to actually pull that information right from that table and create staged invoice lines from it. So let's take a look at an example of an HR license chargeback. In this case, when the load type is source table, the system's going to ask us what table and exactly where to look, what conditions need to evaluate to true to pull that data. In this case, we're looking at our software license table. We're looking at specifically our model, which is our HR license. We're making sure it's actually assigned and in use. We're going to bill this annually based on the usage that we're seeing from our departments. And this will then go pick up on a scheduled job every year all of the licenses and information that we see and bring those in as staged invoice lines. So in this case, we have our consumers. It maps us to that paying department, in this case, 10 licenses to marketing, with our service amount and our quantity per user, per licensed user, right? That's an example of something like an annual license chargeback. Let's take a look at something that would be a bit more time specific, like a monthly service request that would be coming in via a service portal. The data definition setup is exactly the same. We would just give it slightly different criteria. So if I head back to our source data definitions, let's take a look at a requested item, like a desktop from a service catalog. Our source table in this case would be the RITM table, requested item table, and or the requested item, SC requested item table. We're going to say that the state is close complete, meaning that we actually don't charge back for a service until it's close complete. So we can actually look at statuses as well as SLAs on those requests to change how we bill. The price is greater than zero, meaning that we actually charge for this item that was requested, and dynamically looking at everything that was created last month. So in this case, the system's going to automatically go pull a scheduled job monthly for everything that we see that was created last month. And again, this could be dynamic. This could be the last 2 months, this month, next month, etc. That is all dynamic based on the timing that you specify. And then again, the data loads will come in as staged invoice line items. And from there, we put it through our approval workflow in our invoice module. So once those staged invoice lines are in here, again, there's a lot of administrative functionality where we can automate what service rate, payment terms, how people map, consumers map to payers, what our different service groups and categories are in terms of those percentage uplifts based on a category or grouping of services, right? A lot of functionality here that we can get into in a deeper dive demonstration. But ultimately, the flow of those invoice lines, once they're in the system, is everything will start off as that staged invoice line. This is the raw billing information we're getting from those vendor files or from the ServiceNow platform. From here, we want to review, bulk review, and then we ultimately can build the pro forma invoice based on any reviewed or finalized staged invoice line. So this goes through a standard 3-step approval process. Again, you can bulk review from here, or we can actually drive that review process right from a dashboard. So any of that data can bubble up to flag your attention in certain areas. For example, maybe we don't bill for any items less than $1. So here's 17 of those staged invoice lines that I could just delete and or archive for later. Here's also $1,000 or more charge lines. These are 279 or 97 items that I might want to pay closer attention to, for example. From an operations perspective, we can map what status any of these invoices are in, so how much are pending approval, pending review, and have customers put certain line items on hold or disputing those charges. That can also be viewed here, as well as some high-level information like how much are we charging for specific services and how much have we charged specific customers or payers throughout any given fiscal period. That can be filtered dynamically here as well as by customer here. Once those invoice line items have reached past the stage of staged invoice line, they will create an invoice line. These will roll up according to how you want them configured. Out of the box, it rolls up based on consumer, payer, consumption period, and service ID. So that will actually total every invoice line, staged invoice line, into a total for an individual consumer of a service. The invoice lines then can be rolled up one higher level to an invoice. The invoice is ultimately what you want your customer, your end user, to see when you send them that invoice. So if we go ahead and look at one example invoice in the system that is fully approved and published, you are able to, of course, see your different payment terms, your customer information that's going to be auto-populated, then as well as all of the invoice line detail that rolled up to the total amount for this given invoice, right? In this case, $13,800. And again, you could generate that PDF automatically from the system to show the detail of those invoice line items. And from here, you could send this to your CFO or cost recovery team. You could also have this send directly to a transaction system like your SAP or ERP system that would ultimately transact that invoice and that information. From there, we could have a process to send that back to flag this invoice as paid, of course, or again, have any API level integration to flag invoices as paid and what was actually recovered. Any amount that was not recovered for this fiscal period, you can actually generate credits in the solution, as well as the solution can hold variance, meaning it wasn't fully recovered one month. There will be an invoice line item automatically created the next month to make sure we recover and or credit back anything that we did not fully execute against. Lastly, you can bring customers in for cost transparency purposes, so you can actually publish these reports to portals or dashboards or send via email, where any customer could come in and see their consumption trends, so what services they're consuming per month and how many and what they're being billed for, as well as, again, by department, who's being billed for what, how many invoices are being sent out, per payer, per service, right, across the enterprise. So again, all of this can be filtered dynamically, either in the dashboards or based on the logged in user. So of course, a customer would only see the invoices for their team or their department when they would log on to a dashboard like this. So today we talked about how data ultimately can get into the system in one of two ways, how we can send those invoices then through automation in terms of automatically associating a payer, a service category or offering, right, that might have some percentage uplift or flat fee increase, sending invoices through a standardized approval process as they go through their review, how we can monitor that through reporting, and ultimately get to a invoice that can be sent out as a PDF or exported in Excel to feed any other system of action or of record. Thank you for your time. We'll talk soon.